one of the main topics that has kind of been being thrown around is pricing. But beyond price, what other factors, or lead time, availability, or technical support, or perhaps even performance history, do you think is currently shaping customers' decision between OEM and aftermarket parts? And which of these priorities do you feel has shifted recently?
I guess, to kind of tee it up for me, I'm Bill Murth. I'm in the engine parts business, and I've been in the aftermarket for 40 years. I've only been in the aftermarket. And I did start when I was a teenager, so don't do the math. But it's interesting when you listed the things of price and service, supply chain, et cetera. I think this is the best time to be in this business, the heavy-duty business. The transition away from the OE to the aftermarket, I think, is speeding up. And it's because the aftermarket has grown and it's matured, and it's no longer does the OE have a quality advantage, no longer do they have a service advantage. In a lot of cases of older equipment, do they even have the expertise? And so I see this evolving, and the aftermarket is rising, and I think the migration away from OE to aftermarket is going to increase. In the engine business, we've always said it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of the business goes to the OE and 20% comes to the aftermarket. What if that's 25%? What if that's 30%? What if it's 50%? I mean, it's a tremendous amount of volume and opportunity coming over to the aftermarket. So that's why I'm very optimistic. And it's because it's beyond just aftermarket offering price. We're offering the innovations. We're offering the ability to get it to you in a timely manner. We're offering to be able to diagnose a problem quicker and cheaper. So.
No, thank you for that, Bill. Let me kind of build on that a little bit more. I think, when I think about this choice that customers have, you have different market segments, and you're going to have some customers that are always going to be having a proclivity towards an OE part. And you're going to have potentially some other customers that are always going to be more value-oriented, that are going to be solely buying upon price. But you've got a lot of gray area, which is, I think, the decision that we're trying to answer here is, what is those factors, what are those variables that go into that gray market, that someone isn't necessarily black or white, it's OE or a value part. And from my perspective, I think there's an inherent formula that is being used. I would say in the numerator is service plus durability or performance, and then in the denominator is price. And so your end user, your customer, is always going through this inherent calculation that, am I better off buying a aftermarket part that it's got really good performance, it's got a level of service, and maybe the price is a little bit lower. That's a nice high number, if you will, versus an OE, which you could be looking at, well, potentially the perception, I would say the perception is that the product performance will be a little bit better, the service is adequate, but the price is high. So we as a aftermarket parts industry, if you will, are really focused on that formula of service, durability, or performance, which is very, very strong, like you were saying, Bill, but the price is, for the most part, probably a little bit less expensive. So that value proposition that we have is strengthening tremendously. And that's what we as, I'd say, an industry need to reinforce is our service is good, our product performance is at par, not worse, and potentially our pricing is a little bit lower. So we've got a stronger value proposition versus an OE supplier. At least that's how I think about the industry that we're in.
I'll just build up upon that. I think from the perspective of us in the aftermarket, the quality and service is what we build upon on the GET side of the business. And a lot of times we'll lead in with, a lower price, but then the customization that's required within the industry and the aftermarket is where we're a lot more flexible. We see a lot of opportunity for the aftermarket industry is to be more aggressive than a standard OE in building customization and product for them.
Yeah, from my side, I would like to add something. So we as BS working in the undercarriage market, right? And as you already mentioned, I agree with Brendan and Bill regarding the pricing. So the challenge is that the customer's asking, of course, for a better price, but you should provide the availability and comparable quality. And this quality issue is you can reach only if you have a high level production with optimized production facilities and control of the quality always. So the challenge is, I think, to convince the customers that they get a better product, or at least the same level product like they purchase from the OEMs, but with a better wear time or with better availabilities. So this is always a mix about availabilities, lead time, quality, and price. And I think at this moment, as the big OEMs, especially for lead times, because after-sales market values are jumping up and down, and especially in the undercarriage market this year, there was a depressive situation till now. But the challenge is to have in this time, if you can react quickly and fast on demands of the customer needs, this is the challenge, and this is a very big potential for the after-sales.
Out of curiosity, how can the aftermarket industry, how do you feel can the aftermarket industry effectively communicate these advancements and quality to build confidence among the fleet managers and the end users ultimately?
I don't know if there's one answer to that, except for continued performance of all parties involved, from the manufacturers to the service, et cetera, to have some consistency over time of providing that good quality and kind of maturing in their abilities to deliver the product in a timely way, in a good quality way, et cetera.
So prior to joining Parts ASAP 5 months ago, I was working at Bridgestone, and I was responsible for our global agriculture and construction tire business. So within Bridgestone, in the ag and construction tire industry, we were certainly the tier one, and but heavily competing against, I would say, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 manufacturers that were based all over the world, particularly strong in India, Sri Lanka, and China. And so one of the things I was always worried about is that tier one is, what was that value proposition? What's the reason to believe that a customer would pivot away from a tier one into a tier 2 and tier 3 and tier 4? And so one of the ways that we were trying to differentiate, but it was replicated by these tier 2 and tier 3s, was on warranty. We were offering the industry best 9-year, 10-year warranty, and then soon after we declared this high level of warranty, the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 were also doing the same, and their product was performing pretty well. And the other piece that I had always been fearful of, which I think is conversely an opportunity potentially in our industry today, is around product testing. So to what extent can we test our products and compare them to an OE part and say, here is a third-party test that says, our product lasts 5 years, an OE part lasts 5 years, and so we're at par. And I do wonder if that is some way in which we provide a reason to believe to our end users that our product performance is at par, and it's through some independent third-party testing. Again, I don't know if that's relevant. I'm only 5 months into Parts ASAP, but that's kind of the inquiry that I've been on and trying to answer the question that you proposed today.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. And I would like to add something. So what we are doing also in the care sector, so do you have some, of course, some tools to convince the customers about your quality. And these tools are first providing test results from like third parties, or what we do, we have also an in-house laboratory, make exactly the same tests like for the OEM requirements. And you can show this to the customers. This is if they have in case a technical department who understand this figures, of course. And what you can do also is, of course, a continuous communicating face-to-face with the customers. And in our case, what we do, this is a very simple field test. So you go in very critical mines where they have a very less performance on real life, and then just add some trackpads in comparison with the OEMs, and you see the result 1-to-1. So this is very effective because the customers understand in this case, okay, it works. And this is also a good tool to have the challenge with not quality competitors to show at the end the fact if you test it in the field and you can show your performance.
It's pretty much echoing what everybody else has said. When we're looking at the field and testing the product that we're producing, we have third parties, but we also have our own internal labs. One of the beauty of the aftermarket, it doesn't just stretch in one region, it is a global community. And having dealer networks for us globally, we get a lot of field data back, and we're able to compare how we're resulting in different environments, and then improving with our dealers and very quickly compared to the OEs. And that allows us to have the advantage for our dealers and for the aftermarket side, because we're able to respond very quickly on our feet compared to the rest of the industry, to either respond to an issue with warranty, but most likely improve our product that we're offering into the market.
I think that's a good point, that the aftermarket can be very nimble, and it can be very entrepreneurial, and it can be a problem solver. And I think that's, if you take a look at the last 40 years that I've been in the business, and even the origin of IDA was to fight for the very existence of the aftermarket against Caterpillar. It was start off as will fit, might fit, won't fit. You know, we're going to copy this part, and we're going to bring it to the market much, much cheaper. Now I think the aftermarket has evolved in many ways to improve on it, because we are close to something that's being rebuilt, not designed for the first time. It's being rebuilt over and over and over again as an engine. And so we're able to see problems that arise from that, and then bring some innovation to that problem and fix it even beyond what the OEM can do. So kind of your point, Brent, it's very much nimble and fast, and we can do it and solve that problem, bring it to the market very, very quickly. And that now separates the aftermarket away from the OE, because when you're solving a problem, it's really not about price at that point. It's just about solving that issue that a customer will then pay for.
That's very well answered, and this actually ties directly into the following point, which OEMs often warn that aftermarket use may void warranties. It's also something that was covered in the previous conversation as well. So how would independent distributors and repair shops navigate these concerns, and what legal or contractual trends are emerging to address this specifically?
You know, it's once again, I'm in the engine parts business, and we don't get the opportunity to even do anything with that engine until it's out of warranty, till it's on that second and third owner. So we don't really get hit with a lot of those concerns about voiding out a particular engine warranty. So that's not as big a factor that I see in the aftermarket.
This is exactly the same situation in our market for undercarriage. So the warranty we're talking about rear products, right? And if they run out of certain hours and the machine is down, so you have to change them. So it's not really a warranty issue. It's more the risk. What we have at the moment is, if you give a warranty certificate to a customer, they're asking for a warranty certificate of 1,800 or 2,000 hours. all this, of course, depends on the ground conditions. So if you have you're working in very hot conditions like a diamond mine or ore mine, it can get down to 600 or 800 hours. And if you work in a coal mine where there's very soft ground, it's up to 10,000. So this is, I think, if you talk about warranty, you have to discuss this with the customers, but then you are on the same page like for the OEM. So this is not a really issue for the undercarriage parts.
So it kind of seems that from each one of you being focused on different sectors, or the same sector but different categories or areas, basically, you both agree that that's not really much of a concern for your clientele. With the globalization straining supply chains, how has the aftermarket stopped or stepped up to fill these gaps when OEMs face delays? And has this created lasting changes in your market dynamic, ultimately?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, the nimbleness and the ability for the aftermarket to pivot when they have to. If you took a look at the COVID supply chain issues, at least in the States, the aftermarket recovered and was ready long before the OEs were. And that was part of this big start of what I call the decade of the aftermarket, where we're breaking that 80-20 rule, at least on engine, because the aftermarket had the parts first, and we recovered first. So, I think that ability to adapt and to pivot and to do what we need to do to service our customers just has a natural, better result in being able to handle these global issues that pop up. Rarely do I think the aftermarket gets left out totally. It's usually we're first to fix it and bring it to the market.
Yeah, just building on that is, if you think about an OE today, an OE manufacturer today, primarily their source of product is their own manufacturing assets, right? They're committed to their manufacturing assets, and those are multi-million, billion-dollar investments that they are using as a supply source of product. And if there's a potential issue, quality issue, safety issue at that particular plant, their supply chain is adversely affected. And I think about, us as a aftermarket parts supplier. Yes, we are at times back integrated into our own manufacturing or fabrication process, but we also have a diversification of supply sources. So we're not singly dependent upon one supply source. And I think, like Bill was saying, from my perspective, I think we are prepared as an industry to be very responsive to changes, very responsive to COVID and to tariffs. And we're not singularly dependent upon one of our own manufacturing assets for supply. So I think that is a strong source of advantage that we have.
Yeah, and just to echo what Tony and Bill said, just for us, again, it's the nimbleness of our supply chain. We have our own facilities globally that we've placed there to make sure that we can supply the market during the COVID, during tariffs. And then if we do need to have any of our supply chain, we have that ability to expand very quickly into other areas and research where we need to outsource to. And for an example, during COVID, we do work with OEs, but on the aftermarket side, we could kind of see what they were doing versus what we were doing, and they were coming to us asking us how we were being so nimble in response, and they couldn't understand it. And I think it's that layer, these large organizations with their layers upon layers of supply chain, which should be specialized. We're very very focused on how do we get our product to market, and COVID was a good example of that for us, of getting our product globally out of whether it was North America or China, and then via to our other channels of distribution.
Thank you very much. Something that is pretty clear to me, specifically. I mean, I don't come from the specific sector, but having stepped into the space and kind of interacting with so many different suppliers and manufacturers over the past few days, what you're mentioning now, that element of nimbleness is something that definitely has that advantage to the sector, and also emphasizes on how being part of a group like IDA ultimately brings it all together to assist one another and to build that sense of being able to adapt and apply ultimately. And out of curiosity, do you see opportunities for collaboration in future? So with licensing partnerships, perhaps even hybrid models between OEMs and the aftermarket providers? Or do you think that the competition remain the dominant dynamic within the space?
Right now, today, it feels like the OEMs are, a material competitor. And, but at the same time, from my perspective, when you have the end user that likes choice, they like choice, and they also like convenience, that to me is ripe for eventually cooperation between all parties to satisfy a customer. And so I see with time, maybe not in the next 2 to 3 years, but in the next 5 to 10 years, I do see potentially a hybrid model where you've got the aftermarket parts supplier, you've got the OEM parts supplier working together and solving customer problems, where a customer says, well, today I want an OE part here, but I want a more selective aftermarket part there. And can you, as a set of suppliers, work together and get me what I need? And I think with time that'll happen. Maybe it's a little bit difficult to kind of see that today because we look at the OEs as a material competitor. But I think with time, as long as you have, in the end, a customer is going to want choice and they're going to want convenience, I think you'll end up having cooperation. And it's just what kind of business model will exist to enable that.
I would also say, and add to that, and I agree with that, is the IDA organization, getting our members, we don't have a membership problem, we have a participation problem. And getting our members here that are busy in their business every day, they're doing the work, they're doing the service, and they need to be able to collaborate with their peers and with manufacturers and with industry people to, I think, better understand where the market is going and give them a larger perspective. Being in the engine business, half of my world is also on the truck side. They do a very good job of that. If this was a truck show like this would be 1,000 people, all eager to come out and learn and get away from their business. This morning I thought was fantastic with Michael O'Sullivan and the right to repair and so forth. This is information that we need, I think, IDA to help facilitate, to help the aftermarket players learn more and expand more and understand the bigger picture of things. So kind of answering your question to say that there needs to be first collaboration within the aftermarket amongst ourselves.
I can just add from a perspective for the undercarriage sector is that this is exactly what already happens. So there's only a few OEMs who, for example, manufacturing their OEM undercarriage parts by themselves. So most of the companies already buying in from big manufacturers who are selling to the OEM and the after-sales market. And our position is we can create a link between the OEMs and the end customers to more understand the customer needs on one side and provide these services and the solutions and innovations to the OEMs as well.
For the perspective of our manufacturing of GET, we already benefit from the relationship of OE and the aftermarket. From the OE side, supplying into the OE for us, we get that standard of where the industry, of anything of where they're measuring or where they want their standard to be. That allows us on the aftermarket side to improve to, again, the feedback we get from the field on that standard that the OE is providing to the field. We get that information and then we're able to bring it to the aftermarket. And that's a relationship I believe that we get improved on the standard, but then on the aftermarket side, we can improve upon that standard, if that makes sense. And that's something that we've done for many years at Black Hat, is taking that standard that we're provided by the OE and then using that customization to allow the aftermarket, our dealer network, to expand and obviously maybe charge a little bit more and make a little bit more margin. So I think there is already collaboration on our side, on the manufacturing side. It's healthy.
Thank you very much for covering all these points. I'm going to open it up to the floor. If anyone has any questions, just put up your hand. I'm coming on across.
Myself and Carmack, so we both supply to OE and aftermarket. It's not conflicting. Most of the OEMs, like John Deere, they don't manufacture undercarriage at all. So why they get new innovations? Mostly coming from us. Like you can say the 11 Caterpillar, Martis, Maslink. Where they got idea come from? Come from us. So it's a mutual interaction, right? Like we supply to OE, at the same time we found opportunity that OE could not cover. Like whatever we supply to OEM Caterpillar in China, they add a lot of cost, but they do have a huge cost, minimum cost, but it's not good for customer. But we found an opportunity that probably we can skip their dealers. We can serve more effectively to the end users in the market. That's why the manufacturers also, I mean that's value for each other. Yeah, so that's already ongoing collaboration for many years actually.
This is one thing what we did as a track shoe or track pad manufacturer. So we will listen to the customer needs, and we had a lot of inquiries from customers asking us to make, based on the existing available models for the D9, D10s, and D11s, a better product in very critical and very heavy conditions, like for the ore and diamond mines. And we developed and launched 1 month ago, together with our partner British Steel, a new product called the Max Force Series, where we have a much better performance on the wear time against the existing ones. And we introduced this very successfully in the market. And even we developed for the 150 and 200 ton mining excavators a roll profile, which showing up to 50% better performance, because at the moment in this range there are in the market existing only the casted or forged shoes. So we are the first one who can provide to all these companies the new MaxForce line. And this is one sample to explain that we as the after sales companies can even bring innovation in the market among the OEMs, and this is a big advantage also for the end users.
We always say we have the world's largest sandbox just north of us in Edmonton in the oil sands, and we also say it's a compliment when we come up with an innovation, or a dealer comes up with an innovation, and we help push that forward into the market, and we have a lot of fun. Sometimes it's a challenge, but I think that's part of what we enjoy doing, so we'll call it fun, of creating that product that can outperform. I won't go into numbers, but usually we've had some very good success up in the Fort McMurray oil sand region in the last few years. And we find it a compliment when all of a sudden 3, 4, 5 years later, all of a sudden, again, that slower reaction time, but the OEs are starting to copy what we're doing, or the Chinese suppliers that are coming into the market are copying the designs that we have. Then we have a 5-year advantage to come up with something new again, but it's complementary to us, and it pushes us to do better on the aftermarket side again.
Ray Jarvinen with the iTech group of companies out of Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. One of the things that I think we're missing here is the importance of dealers in this equation. You guys talk about OEMs, the manufacturer of the machines, and you talk about the aftermarket world, or the end user, and ultimately that's the person that we have to get to. But I think dealer education is very, very important. I've been at dealer conferences where a dealer has literally asked the question as to why he can't get undercarriage parts from his OEM supplier. He's complaining about the lack of parts, links and track pads, and this dealer had no idea that there's an aftermarket supply of these parts. And I think for an end user, who's dealing directly with that person behind the counter at this dealership. It's important. That relationship's built already. We need, in the aftermarket world, or the OEM replacement world, I'd like to call it, educate these dealers that are representing the products that they sell, the manufactured excavators and whatever else. They're the direct link to the end user, and the education of that group of people are very important for us to expand our sales into that world.
Yeah, I think this is a very good point, and this is exactly what we started to do, to introduce. So when I'm traveling and visiting our key partners and dealers in big markets like also in Africa and Australia, this is a very critical point and a very good point which we mentioned. So it's very important to get the guys who are out in the contact with the end customers and speaking face to face, that they have the knowledge to explain the products also from the technical side, and what does it mean? Because exactly what Ray's mentioned is that a lot of companies and customers even don't understand where's the difference. So you have to explain, and it more you get them involved and teach about all the features and the technical things. This gives us more confidence to the customer to choose your product at the end.
Yeah, I think training is one of the great things moving forward, using all the different social medias, YouTubes, knocking on doors, kind of all of the above. At IPD, we're kind of looking at all of the above. We're building our training to be an ongoing resource 24/7 with YouTube videos, et cetera, as well as having a good sales force out there that's knowledgeable. In the end, people don't buy by price. They'll tell you they buy by price because they want you to lower yours, but you don't go out tomorrow and buy the cheapest tires. You wouldn't find the cheapest brain surgeon. You're not going to fly on some airline with the youngest pilots for a cheaper price. So the price is an illusion. But when you can't articulate why your product has value, that value proposition that you talk about, then price just defaults to be the next common denominator, and I'll just take the cheap one. So to your point, I think it's very, very important for the aftermarket to be articulating constantly and training constantly in all avenues to educate the market as to why this part and what's available to them, et cetera.
As an equipment dealer, I think it's important to be a modern equipment dealer. And we, as a dealer, we want to offer our customers an OEM option, but we want to offer also that customer an aftermarket option, a reman option, a used option, and that consumer can decide what's the best option for him. And for myself, I see dealerships that are stuck in 25 years back, and they're just OEM part. That's not the modern dealer. That's not the dealer that's going to take market share from the other competitors in the market.
Yeah, I see, especially on the truck side, when we talk about dealers, they're all clamoring to come to the aftermarket and having all makes programs, et cetera. Now, they're not that good at it because they don't know past what they've always known, but they're getting better at it, and I think you'll probably see more dealers coming into the aftermarket and competing with true aftermarket or only aftermarket people more and more as time goes by. And I think that's the strength of the aftermarket. That's why I call this the decade of the aftermarket, because there's this migration that's coming over and accepting it. Who goes out tomorrow and buys a Ford brake for your Ford Bronco? Who do you buy a Ford wiper, right? Do you buy a Ford headlight? No, those are all brands. You don't go to Ford except for a warranty. And that's, if you can imagine that happening on the heavy duty side, there's a lot of growth and a lot of money coming over to the aftermarket. And and I would always say we're about 15, 20 years behind the automotive side. So.
I think that's very well covered. I'm going to take 2 more questions from the floor.
Hello, Hussein from Ukastar Company. I have a question, but also like an additional information that I want to get feedback from your side. OEM has one certain quality level, but aftermarket products has a lot of different quality level for the products. Just what do you think about that? How your companies, what are your companies doing, like to for the marketing or for this kind of things?
So are you saying that the OE is just always consistent, really good quality, and the aftermarket might have some bottom dwellers and some premium range?
Yes.
I don't know if the OE necessarily has that consistent quality advantage anymore, as they've on the engine side, they've gone through reusing parts, and they've gone through rebuilt a product that's very problematic, and that's also been driving some of that migration back. So I don't know if I would necessarily agree with the premise that OE anymore is this perfect stuff. As far as the range, I don't, companies and products and stuff have to stand on their own over time. We've been in business for 70 years, so we've earned that respect. If you're just coming in and selling at price at that bottom level, it's because there's probably 10% of the market that piece of equipment is only going to be around another year, and then it's going to be thrown away, so why am I going to put money in it? So even that does serve a particular purpose in the marketplace. So I don't know if that answers your question, and I'll let somebody else jump in.
John Huntoon from Sagen. Where do you think this difference in automotive and heavy duty comes from, where there's a 15-year advantage? Is it population, or where do you think that comes from?
It's a good question. I spent a large part of my history in my career at Federal-Mogul, which was, I ran the heavy-duty division in an automotive company, and they just always used to say that we're 15, 20 years behind. I don't know if that's true or not, but I always kind of repeat it. But I see it. I see it happening now, especially since the aftermarket is, the brands within the aftermarket, Black Cat, et cetera, it stands on its own. An IPD engine part stands on its own, that it's now looked at as being an equal quality brand up alongside an OE brand. So when people are making their decisions, they're not looking at it necessarily as just an aftermarket. They're looking at it on the merits of that brand, and I think that helps. But I don't know if it's a hard, fast rule. It's 15, 20 years, but it does seem to follow even some of the issues that have happened in the automotive side kind of happen on the heavy duty side as things grow. So.
I'll try to answer this as well. I'm not sure if this is the perfect answer, but I think, at least in the U.S. and the automotive industry, if you as a consumer have had an accident, right? You typically would go to your insurance company. Your insurance company would require you to get 3 quotes from people to repair your car. And so I think the insurance company saw, and this is years ago, saw an enormous opportunity where they're collecting their premiums, but they can lower their cost by getting more value parts versus going to a Mopar and getting Chrysler to supply their parts. And so I think that's how LKQ was accelerated their growth, is they were a company that were getting salvage parts, reman parts, value parts, and that was a very strong business for them because the insurance company saw that, again, we could get a repair, we continue to collect our premium, but our cost structure will be lowered by working with, call it an aftermarket provider. So I think that's why the automotive industry has been kind of ahead. And now that is a equal play, I think, for us in, say, construction and agriculture material handling, it's not necessarily insurance driven. It's, hey, these parts work, they're potentially lower priced, and maybe not the insurance is the incentive to rethink the business model, but it's, hey, these parts are sufficient and in many ways equally durable. And that's why I think we're a little bit behind the automotive industry, because the automotive industry, again, all of that was settled out because of insurance. I think that's part of the evolution.
Can we get a big round of applause for the speakers on the stage? Thank you for your time and your expertise you shared today.